Okay, as promised, here's my tutorial for setting up VS Code, Git, and connecting it to GitHub and publishing to GitHub pages. So the first thing we're going to do is head on over to Microsoft Edge. Unfortunately, that's the only browser that exists on this particular sandbox. I'm going to go ahead and type VS Code, and we'll do a nice, fresh, clean install. There's a bunch of different versions here. I'm just going to click the big button for Windows 10, Windows 11, and it should download. And we will open the file. You probably won't get this message. This is just because I'm in a Windows sandbox, a clean install of Windows that's running on my device. Makes it easier to do these demonstrations, but you shouldn't get that error message. We'll accept the agreement. All of these look good. I'm going to create a desktop icon. I'm also going to add Open with Code. These are nice little tools that allow you to add an extra menu to the context window, or context menu, excuse me. So when you're in Explorer and you have one of your folders, and let's say you wanted to open your desktop in VS Code, you can just right click and do Open in VS Code. So that's all those are. And that looks good. We'll hit install. All right, looks good. So let's launch Visual Studio Code. All right, and you'll likely see something that looks like this. You can safely ignore this one for now. The first thing it wants you to do is set up your AI features. So assuming you already have your GitHub account and you've set up GitHub for education, this should be relatively straightforward. All this does, it requires you to sign in to use Copilot. So I'm actually going to go over here and click on the Accounts button. And there should be... Oh, there we go. There's usually a sign-in option down there. I don't know why it's not there. I also see signed out here, so I guess I could just go down here. But I'm going to sign in with GitHub, which should open the web browser. And then you'll type in your username, and I actually have to go and copy my password from my main machine. There we go. And I'll click sign in. Now my machine or my account on GitHub has two-factor authentication, so I actually have to enter in a code. All looks good. Now what this is going to do after I hit continue is it's going to redirect back to VS Code, basically telling VS Code that I am who I say I am, and then it'll access whatever Copilot AI features that I have on my account. All right, this is just asking, do I always want to open up these in VS Code? I'm just going to hit yes. And open. You should receive this. This just happens to be, basically what's happening is it's trying to sync all of my settings in VS Code. I'm going to tell it to use whatever's on the server instead of actually using my local settings. So you notice that like the theme that I'm using actually changed, and it looks a little bit different right now. And everything is syncing up, which is good. Shows me that I'm signed in and I have access to GitHub. Next thing we want to do is we want to enable integration with GitHub. And we can't do that without the Git executable installed on our machine. You'll notice when you click on the source control icon on the left side of VS Code, it shows you immediately that you need to download Git for Windows. Until you have Git for Windows, or if you're on the Mac, Git for Mac installed, you don't get access to this panel here. So we're going to have to go ahead and open up this URL and install Git. The nice thing is it drops you right into the download page for the Git executable. For those of you that are on Mac OS, it's pretty simple. You just have to open up your terminal and type this in. Don't forget to remove the $sign. So that's xcode -select -- install. That is the install script for Xcode command line tools. It'll pop up with a window asking you to agree to some sort of license or whatever, and then it'll download all of the command line tools. It might take a while depending on where you are on campus or whether or not you're wired or wireless or what have you. And that's pretty much it. Once that completes, you have Git installed. For those of us on Windows, we can click to download the latest version, and we will walk through the installation. So this is what it looks like. Most of these things we can fly right through. This looks fine. All of this looks fine. If you want to add an icon on your desktop for Git Bash, you can click on that. It's not really necessary. We're not going to spend much time in Git Bash. This looks fine. All right, so here's where you might want to make a change. Unless you're comfortable with Vim, which is the default editor for Git, I would recommend for digital media and design students to actually go down and change this to use Visual Studio Code. Basically, anytime, I'm not sure what this is. Oh, it's installing fonts for me as my VS Code is syncing. Sorry about that. Basically, anytime Git requires some input from you or requires you to make some decisions about a file that's being merged, and there might be some merge conflicts, it needs to know what to open up in order to allow you to input some text or to edit some text. By default, Vim is being used. If you're not familiar with it, which you probably aren't, we use Visual Studio Code instead. That means when Git is asking for more information, like maybe you forgot to do a commit message and it pops up a file that requires you to enter in a commit message, this will now open up in VS Code. Most of these, the rest of these, we're just going to leave as default. Whatever they have set, I'm just going to keep going and do all of these default settings. This is all fine. Looks good. This will use Git Credential Manager. This will become apparent later on when we're trying to publish our repository. Git has their own built-in credential manager that will handle authentication. So when you push and pull repositories, you'll get a little pop-up that requires you to sign in. And once you sign in, it will authenticate you properly so you can push and pull your repositories. This is all fine. We'll keep that the same. And then we hit install. Beautiful. There we go. I do not want to look at the release notes, but I will open Git Bash just to show you what this looks like. Notice it added a little icon over here. We'll hit finish. And Git Bash just looks like this for Windows users. This is pretty similar to what Mac users see. It has all of the necessary tools that you'll need to run any Git commands inside of Windows. So I can actually type the Git executable and run it just like that. Now we're not going to spend a lot of time inside of Git and running the commands manually. We're going to have VS Code handle most of that heavy lifting for us. But if you ever get into a situation where you need to run any specific commands, this is one way that you could do it. You can open up Git Bash, and then you have the ability to write any of the Git commands that you need. All right, now before we get started, there is one thing that we need to do to configure this properly, and that is setting your name and your email address that gets associated with your Git install. And we do this from the command line, and this is going to be the first and last time that we use the command line to run any Git commands in this tutorial. And it looks like this. We type in git config space -- global user dot name, and then in quotes you'll type in your full name. All right, so that's git space config space -- global space user dot name Brian Daly, or your name, obviously. This is basically just a configuration value inside of the Git system, and it stores information about you so that when you make your commits, push your information, it has information about you tied to those commits. So we'll hit enter, and unfortunately you don't get any feedback on this. Not great user experience. And we're gonna I'm going to use the up key, so the up arrow, and we're gonna change this slightly. Instead of user.name, we're gonna do user.email. Now this is one of those things that you only ever have to do once when you set up Git on your system. So we should never have to do this again. So now it's the same command, more or less, but instead of user.name, it's user.email, and then in quotes, you actually put your email address. I recommend using an email address that you've actually associated with your GitHub account. Mine is brian@uconn.edu, and that's an email account that I have on record with GitHub. And then that's it. So we're done with Git, or at least setting it up. All right, so we're ready to go now. If I go back to VS Code, there's a bunch of stuff going on here because it's syncing all of my plugins. So I'm going to cancel out all of these. Apologies. Cancel this. All right. And let's go over to source control again. So I clicked on my source control tab over here. It's still showing that I need to download Git. And that's just because it runs the check for Git when VS Code is actually started. So it doesn't actually recognize that we typed it in and installed Git just yet. So we have to click on the reload link, and it reloads VS Code, and if we give it a second, there we go. So we're all good. We now have Git features enabled. So it gives you two options: either open a folder, clone a repository. What we're going to do next is create our folder that's going to house all of our assignments for the semester. For this tutorial, I'm going to put it on the desktop. So I'm going to right click and do a new folder. Where you place it is entirely up to you. You can put it on your desktop. You can put it into you know, your home folder, whatever makes the most sense for you. But this folder is going to house all of the assignments, the projects that you work on for this semester. As a reminder, because we're dealing with web assets, we should be careful about naming. In general, as Google recommends, we should not use spaces. And because of issues with server compatibility, we want to keep everything lowercase. All right, so you shouldn't use any capital letters. And this goes for your file names and folders and everything inside of this main folder as well. So when you're creating new images, different assets, JavaScript files, CSS files, they should all be lowercase. All right, so I'm going to call this DMD, and instead of a space, I'll do dash 3470 and hit enter. All right, so this is going to house all of my assignments, projects, everything for this semester. And this is what we're going to back up and load onto GitHub. All right, so inside here, I'm going to create another new folder for the week 1 assignment. Because our week numbers get into double digits, I like to zero pad my numbers so that all my folders stay in alphabetical order. If I just did week -1, the week 1 folder would get mixed up with week 11 and week 10 and week 12 instead of being in the proper order. So there's my week 1 folder. Now, a nice little trick with VS Code, you can actually go and select open folder, or you can actually take the folder that you're working on and just drop it right into VS Code. And a new instance opens up. In our Explorer tab, yes, I trust the code because I am the author. Don't show that again. And there we go. You'll see, let me bump this up. I just did a Control plus. For those of you on Mac, it's just Command plus, should be, to zoom in and zoom out. And we'll close this. So everything inside of our Explorer should now match what we have in the actual File Explorer in Windows. This is the same if you're using Finder on the Mac. They should be effectively clones of one another, right? So if I go inside of here in my week 1 folder and I select it, and then I click on a new file, I can do index.html. And if we now go into here, you'll see that index.html is also there as well. Unfortunately, the default install of Windows doesn't show file extensions, which is really annoying, but that's just the way it is. All right, so back to this. We've got our index file. We can use Emmet to scaffold out our HTML for us. It's kind of hard to remember all of the HTML tags and whatnot, so you can just do an exclamation point and hit the tab key, and that drops in scaffolded out HTML page. You'll notice that these items here are highlighted. That's because we can tab through them and change them immediately after this text has been added to our HTML file. So I'll hit tab because I want to keep device width the same. I want to keep 1.0, the initial scale, the same, but I do want to change the document title. So I'll say week 1 assignment. As we talked about in class, or you probably know, this is really important because this is what shows up in the tab, in your browser tab when you view this. But it also shows up as the title on the search engine. So if you publish your page, someone Googles it, whatever you have in that title tag is what shows up as the heading for your search result inside of Google. All right, so then we'll do an H1 tag, and I'll say, now that's Copilot automatically dropping in some text for me. I didn't actually type in week 1 assignment, but if I wanted to accept that, I could hit the tab key, and then it'll fill it out. Okay, ignore that for now. But I'm actually going to put I love CSS3 and hit save. Now, in order to preview this the way that it would on an actual web server, you're going to want to, if you don't have it already, you're going to want to go to the extensions and look for the live server extension. There's one here by the author's name is Ritwick Day. I don't know if that's his actual name or not. I'm assuming it is. But I already have it installed because I'm signed in and it synced all of my plugins for me and my extensions and whatnot. But if you don't have it installed, I highly recommend it. After which, you'll be able to go down to the bottom of VS Code and you'll see a little Go Live button. If you click that, that starts a web server. You will likely get some messages like this. Do I want to allow this app to access networks? Yes, I do. Otherwise, I can't run the web server. So I'll hit allow. Unfortunately, because of my settings, it's trying to load Chrome, but I don't actually have it on this machine. What will end up happening for you is basically it'll start a little web server at 5500. There it is. There's the web server. Notice there's our week 1 folder. If I click on it, it opens up our week 1 folder, and there we go. We get I love CSS. The cool thing about this plugin, not only does it allow you to preview what your page is going to look like, it makes it so that you don't have to keep hitting save and then refreshing the page to see your updates. It live reloads. So I can actually go here and let's just say I added some styles for some reason and I said background color. Whoops. It's been a while since I've written some CSS, huh? Background color is light blue. Just like that. I don't know why that keeps popping up. But if I hit save and I go here, before I even opened up this window, the color had already changed. It detected that save and live reloaded the page so I can instantly see my changes. And I'll show you this sort of side by side so you can see this happening right away. I'll add a paragraph. It's really cool. Now once I hit save, it instantly updates inside of my browser window automatically. So really nice feature, makes it really easy to see your updates sort of as they happen and as you save them. But now we want to launch this. We want to push this code up to GitHub so that we can maybe collaborate with others. But more importantly, we want to launch this awesome website that we just created. So we're going to go to the source control tab. We will click initialize repository. Basically what this does, you won't see it in Windows, but it drops a .git directory into your project folder. And then that keeps track of all of the changes and the history to all of your files. As I mentioned, you don't see it in here, but there actually is a .git folder in here. All right, so now that this is actually a Git repository, we can make commits. Effectively, they're snapshots of our code at a single point in time. So this allows me to go in. It's detecting that I made a bunch of changes to this folder, and I did. I created a new file called index.html. If I want this file included in my snapshot, I can either individually click on the plus sign next to it, or if you're lazy and maybe you made a ton of changes, you added maybe 20 more files here, it's a little bit easier to hover over changes and hit the plus icon. that'll stage all of the changes. It basically just tells Git, everything you see here that's been modified, I want to add it to my snapshot. And then you need to label your snapshot so that when you go back through, you can remember what it was that you did with that piece of code, or why you were taking a snapshot at this point in time. So I'm going to say I finished week 1 assignment, and I want to commit it. So the commit button is effectively what handles and creates that snapshot of code. I hit commit. It shows up down here at the bottom saying that I took a snapshot of this code at this point in time, and this was the message or the label that was assigned to it. All right. Now we want to take this code and push it up to GitHub so that we can share it and publish it. All right, so we're going to hit publish branch. You might get this message saying that the extension GitHub wants to sign in. So we'll hit allow. Now, oops. You should already be signed in if it opens up the same browser. If not, you'll have to enter in your username and password for GitHub. I'm just going to hit continue, which should redirect me back to VS Code. Now we have two options. It sees my username, and it sees the name of the folder that all of my content is in. That's the general convention for storing repositories on GitHub. It's stored under your username, and then beneath your username is the name of the project, usually that folder name that we created. You have two options. You can make it a private repository, or you can make it a public repository. I'm going to change the name because I actually think I already have one up there named DMD 3470. Demo again. Notice it changes the name of the repository. If you have GitHub Education, you can make this a private repository and still use GitHub Pages. If for some reason you don't have GitHub Education yet, you can make this into a public repository, and you can still use GitHub Pages to publish your web pages. The difference between these two is if it's a private repository, only you can see the source code that's in it, or whoever you give access to. If it's a public repository, everyone can see this source code. So if you do choose public, just be careful what you type into your code. I wouldn't put any personal information in there. Obviously, it goes without saying, no passwords, no keys, anything that you wouldn't want other people to see, because it becomes completely public and people can search through your code on GitHub. I'm going to click publish to GitHub public repository. And it's going to upload my files and my changes, including the sort of database of all of the changes that happen. This is what I was talking about before. This is the GitHub Credential Manager. Again, we're probably going to have to sign in using the browser. I was already authenticated anyway. So there we go. We got our message that says successfully published the bdaily/DMD3470-demo-again repository. And it even gives you a nice little open button, which brings you right to your repository as it is shown on GitHub. All right, so we're rocking. We got our week 1 folder. However, this is not what you should submit to me as an assignment. It's great that I can go up and view your code, but I want to see it as a web page. I want to see it interpreted. I want to see that HTML file interpreted by the browser and what it looks like in the browser. To do that, we have to turn on something called GitHub Pages, and that looks like this. Close this and just focus on this window. You're going to go into Settings. You're going to go down to Pages, and you'll see something that says Deploy from Branch. That's what we're going to use. There is something called GitHub Actions, which is a little bit more advanced. We don't really need that at this stage. All we're doing is just basically saying everything in our folders, just take it and put it up on a web server and give us a URL that we can use to view it. That's all we want to do. We're going to select the main branch. Yours might be also master, depending on your version of Git. A while back, Git made the change, and GitHub made the change to default to the name main instead of master. So if you have some older versions of Git on your system, an older version of Git, or whatever you're using to interface with GitHub, it might have created a master branch instead. Whatever it is, it should be listed here, and that's the one that you want to select, and then you hit save. Now, you won't get your URL right away. It's going to take a minute or two, because what happens is there's actually a deployment process that happens, and you can see when I go to my main page here, it says pending. It's actually creating a new instance, a web server instance, and making it live. If we go back, once that's done, if we go back to pages, at some point, I promise, I have to hit refresh a few times. We will get our URL. There it is, finally. So one important thing to note about that is that notice it took a good 15-20 seconds for this to become live. That's an important thing to note. So when you're pushing code up and publishing code on GitHub, it may take a little while before your changes appear at this URL. All right, so now this is our live URL for this particular project. I'm going to click on Visit Site, and we get a 404 error for not found. And I'll show you why. This is our URL, and this is the folder for our repository. If we go to our repository, you'll notice that there's no index file or HTML files in this folder. So that's why it's showing as not found. It's not finding anything to show on the web page. So we have to instruct it to go inside of the week 1 folder, or the folder it is that we want someone to see. So we need to append week-01/ onto the end, and there we go. We get our URL, or our web page. So this is going to be every week the URL that you're going to submit. Next week's assignment, we'll probably have a week 02 folder or week 2 folder or whatever you call it. I don't really care what you call your folders or how you organize your projects, as long as when I click on your URL that you've submitted through Husky CT, I click on the URL and it loads. Another thing I want to point out as a reminder for those of you who might not remember from previous courses, I didn't specify which HTML file here that I wanted to get loaded by the browser. But I just want to point out that this is the same as typing in index.html. These are effectively the same thing. And that's because on this particular web server, index.html is the default document that gets viewed if you don't specify which document you want to view. So in this case, we're telling the browser, hey, go to this website in this folder and then go into the week 1 folder. But we weren't explicit about telling it which file we wanted it to load. Let's say, for example, we had like an about file, about.html. By adding the file name at the end, we're explicit in telling the browser that's the file that I want you to view. If we don't, web servers have a fallback. They typically default to your index.html file, and that's why you can specify this. That's why you can use this URL without index.html at the end, because index.html is the default document for the server. The server automatically loads index.html if you haven't told it to load something else. And that's it. We'll talk more about this stuff next week and get a little bit more into using the AI and VS Code. But once you have this, you can submit.